he's talking about. There's more footage. There's 140 hours that he has. And each episode was only maybe an hour, I think. There's 4 episodes. So there's at least 130 something more hours that he hasn't edited or, produced.
For some reason, Diddy, around the time of his arrest, thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be exonerated later, so I'm going to film all this, and then I can use it in my big comeback later when I'm not in jail. Didn't work out the way he thought, and it turns out he went to jail for a few years. All right, he didn't get the full amount, but he still got a few years. And 50 Cent somehow managed to pay for the footage off of the videographer. Probably Diddy's worst nightmare, this. It's got to be up there. Now, we're going to get into what's in the actual documentary, and hell, it's something.
Anything that surprised you from that footage?
The footage, well, I mean, it was really interesting to see his last days of freedom, and what was sort of important to him. Obviously, there's phone calls with his attorneys, with his team. It was very interesting to watch a man who's known for his brand presence. He has a really amazing knack for marketing and all of that, and how he was sort of taking that into account in how he was coming off to the public, in the days leading up to his arrest and indictment.
Like 3 or 4 pictures in the documentary that I've seen of myself. Some people say they saw more, but I know three different times where I was certain places that you could actually see me in the documentary, and that's the only thing you want.
When Netflix released Sean Combs' The Reckoning, viewers immediately sensed something was off. Heavy allegations, alarming timelines yet polished. Restrained delivery that felt like it was holding back. The problem wasn't missing facts, it was the lack of raw emotion, genuine reactions, and unscripted chaos. Igniting speculation that crucial footage never made the cut. Insiders claim the cameras captured far more than what aired, including volatile behind-the-scenes moments. Filmed just days before Diddy's 2024 arrest, when pressure was closing in from all sides, this wasn't a retelling of the past, it was a collapse happening in real time. What poured gasoline on the controversy was the unlikely force driving the project. 50 Cent, an outspoken rival with nothing to protect, paired with Gene Deal, a former insider who once stood closest to Diddy. That pairing alone hinted at unresolved scores. Then came the legal resistance, Netflix insisting everything was lawfully obtained, while Diddy's team accused the production of using private material all the while. 50 Cent keeps warning that viewers have only been shown a sliver of what exists, and Gene Deal is adamant the story runs much deeper, which leaves one question impossible to ignore. What was cut, and who decided it was too dangerous to reveal?
For some reason, Diddy, around the time of his arrest, thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be exonerated later, so I'm going to film all this, and then I can use it in my big comeback later when I'm not in jail. Didn't work out the way he thought, and it turns out he went to jail for a few years. All right, he didn't get the full amount, but he still got a few years. And 50 Cent somehow managed to pay for the footage off of the videographer. Probably Diddy's worst nightmare, this. It's got to be up there. Now, we're going to get into what's in the actual documentary, and hell,
we need the core theme to be, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong on any front.
By the way, these conversations, the lawyer had no idea he was recording them. So when the lawyer's like, yeah, we need everyone to believe you did nothing wrong, it kind of takes away from when the lawyer is out in public saying, yeah, my client is completely innocent, and now he's showing the behind the scenes where he clearly didn't think he was very innocent. So not Diddy's smartest move. However, throughout this journey, you'll see he makes a lot of crazy decisions.
I don't think it's working. I've listened. I've been a superb client, as you said. I jumped on the plane. I'm coming to New York, but I'm just running around waiting for a shoe to drop.
He's shitting himself right now, in case you can't tell, and he really doesn't look good.
It's the middle of September, and there's still no indictment.
Bro, then you have to have a spokesman. You have to have some sort of comms to constantly be pushing that, Mark. Because you may just be a person that you just may watch CNN. You know what I'm saying? And there's 9 billion people in the world. And 7 billion of them is on Instagram and TikTok.
He's basically trying to get control of the narrative. That's what he's really worried about. He wants public perception to be, this was all bullshit. Unfortunately for him, we had all seen the CCTV of him beating the shit out of Cassie. So we know you're not a good guy, man. That's out there. A statement from your solicitor is really not going to change that.
We have to find somebody that'll work with us, whether they're from this country or from another country. It could be somebody that has dealt in the dirtiest of dirty business of media. in propaganda.
We need to brainwash some motherfuckers right now, and we need people who are used to working with the dirtiest of dirty, because that's what he is, and he's admitting it. How could you let this footage fall into the hands of 50 Cent, my guy? And honestly, it always comes down to money with Diddy, because Diddy didn't get rich just because he was, clever in music. Diddy got rich because he robbed people all the time, and him not taking care of the people around him, it just comes back to bite him a million times over.
It's like we have a movie, you're speaking this language, and you know what I'm saying, we need subtitles, and we're not providing the audience with subtitles. And I invited you to this movie, and you in this thing, you don't know what's going on. You just see, you just see images, quickly. Now it has a whole life of its own.
I gotta say, this whole doc was edited well. When he said you just see the pictures and they cut to the CCTV. Well done, 50. You nailed that, son. If you're going to take him down in style. So you get a clear window from the jump here into Diddy's psyche. He doesn't give a about Cassie or any of these girls. He doesn't give a about anyone. It's save yourself mentality, and it's crisis mode. And you can see on his face, well, he's got a problem. This is at an all-time high of his taking, surely, because he is stressed.
The most incendiary material is rumored to come from the final days leading up to Diddy's September 2024 arrest, and it allegedly captures something chilling. Awareness this wasn't panic or denial, it was acceptance. Cameras are said to have followed him through strained meetings, frantic calls, and tightly guarded moments never meant to be seen, including a now notorious hotel room recording where he speaks to his lead attorney on speakerphone. His voice is steady, but weighed down as he acknowledges they're not stalling or maneuvering anymore, they're losing. A rare admission that suggests his leverage was slipping away from there. The conversation reportedly drifts away from courtroom tactics and toward damage control, centering on shaping narratives, steering perception, and relying on specialists who operate quietly behind the curtain of media influence. That context helps explain the fierce backlash from his legal team, who argue these were private exchanges that crossed a serious ethical boundary. While Netflix and 50 Cent pushed back just as aggressively, what makes this footage so unsettling isn't only what's said, but when it was captured, it was filmed before the arrest, before the spectacle, freezing a moment when money, power, and silence were no longer shields. And once that reality settles in, it's hard to believe what aired was ever the whole story. Especially as reports suggest the footage came from a personal documentary Diddy himself was recording, an effort to control his legacy that may have slipped completely out of his control.
50, how'd you get it, and what does that scene show?
Well, I mean, you're a journalist, Harvey. Harvey, you would not disclose your sources.
We usually don't.
Yeah, but I got it. Yeah.
What he said.
and what do you think it conveys? Because we see someone trying to pull the strings and talking about, he would say affecting, others would say manipulating the public views of the allegations.
I think that, one big theme of the series is to go behind the scenes to really understand how brilliant you could say Sean Combs is at marketing, at owning his narrative, controlling the narrative at all times. And so why would that stop, when his life is on the line? So I think that, on its face, that's what it is. But as you get deeper in the film, you start to realize, perhaps how some of these tactics, how they really came to present themselves, during the trial.
You show that, his abilities, his early rise. Alexandra, you also give time to victims of the alleged abuse. Some of the cases are in different procedural postures. And you show victims who were women and men. Why is that important?
Because, victims of sexual assaults, sexual violence, gender should not be a part of that conversation. When you are a victim, you are a victim. And I think that, this series was a platform in a way for these alleged victims to come forward, give their truth, put context to their situations when so much of it was ripped out, and we just the world was going for the salacious headlines, and they really had the time to tell their story.
Yeah, and the film takes us way behind the PR or propaganda machine. You see Diddy the day he's finding out about new suits against him while he's in New York, preparing for a possible criminal arrest.
Even though it was never acknowledged publicly, Diddy's strategy is said to have unraveled quietly behind the scenes as stalled contracts, missed payments, And broken promises began eroding loyalty, and once trust collapses, recordings stop being memories and start becoming currency sources, claim the videographers, unsure of their own protection and fed up with unfulfilled guarantees. Eventually released the footage, opening the door for 50 Cent's production circle to allegedly step in while 50 has never confirmed how it unfolded. He's also never denied what exists, instead choosing a different tactic: pressure through silence, cryptic messages, dark humor, and perfectly timed hints that implied he knew far more than he was saying. None of it felt random. It worked as psychological leverage. Netflix has repeatedly insisted the footage was obtained lawfully. But legality doesn't erase the discomfort of watching power disintegrate in real time once the material changed hands, control evaporated, editorial power shifted elsewhere. And the balance flipped completely. A man who once commanded every room suddenly had no authority over his own story, and that loss of narrative control is exactly what makes the unseen footage so dangerous.
He didn't have the power to do anything, but they using his name to like push the whole documentary, and that's what it was about. So that's why you don't see a cameo other than the pictures they used of me on the film in the documentary. I got like 3 or 4 pictures in the documentary that I've seen of myself. You know, some people say they saw more, but I know three different times where I was certain places that you could actually see me in the documentary, and that's the only thing you're gonna get. But the stories that they told in the documentary, bro, come on. They could have went a whole lot deeper. They could have did a whole lot more. So I ain't in the documentary because that lady that was the director, I think, what's her name? Alex, you know, Alex State, you know her name, Mighty? Yo, Mighty, just give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna look this up, all right? Okay. Her name is Alex Stapleton. The director that I spoke to was Alex Stapleton. She was the one who told me that she was the director, she was the producer, whatever, this, that, and the third, the whole 9 yards. And she was talking mad greasy to me. And listen here, it's no my after you talk that kind of talk to me, it's no amount of money she could have paid me anyway for me to get in there. You know, my story is more too valuable, you know, getting in the depth or getting in depth with this whole stuff. And it would have helped that documentary a whole lot. You know what I'm saying? In actuality, they used all the stuff that I told them and did it the way that I was saying do it. Tim Dog started off with the childhood with Puff and the whole 9 yards. Kirk Burrows do the business part, but they was trying to put people in there like Mark Curry and other people to talk about the streets or what was going on, you know, a certain thing. But Mark can only say so much, you know what I'm saying, because he was an artist, you know, so he wasn't with Puff like I was with him during that time when we was running back and forth here and there and the whole 9 yards. So, you know, Miss Alex Stapleton is the one reason why I'm not in the documentary, but it's all right with me. I've been in a lot of documentaries. I did The Shine, I did the A&E, I did the Discovery Channel, I did the Fox. You know, I've been in a whole lot of different documentaries, and I'm always on the art of dialogue. So the people been getting most of the information from here anyway.
Yeah, man, you always on here, man. Always got to bring you on. So with that being said, man, I want to get right into the documentary, man. How you feel about the documentary, man? The behind the scenes footage they got of Diddy leading up to him getting arrested. How you feel about all that, man?
Well, what I feel about the documentary, they left a whole lot of key things out. If they was going to do something and they're going to say in the reckoning of Sean Combs, the reckoning, or Diddy, the reckoning and stuff like that, it should have been a lot of people that we lost because of him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only Big. It wasn't only Tupac. You understand? For the atmosphere that he put those kids in. You got a guy named Anthony Wolf Jones, who was from Bad Boy, from its conception is doing security and being one of the financiers of Puff having to have some money to keep Big and Craig Mack around before he got to Clyde Davis. You know what I'm saying? They wasn't able to tell that story because they didn't have no intel on that story or what went down, or they didn't do their investigation.
13 Gene Deal's involvement shifted the story with a different kind of weight as Diddy's former bodyguard. He's repeatedly emphasized one chilling truth: nothing in that world happened without a camera rolling. According to Gene, filming wasn't rare or situational. It was standard practice, woven into meetings, parties, and even moments that appeared private on the surface, not for memories, not for safety, but for leverage. He suggested that Diddy treated constant documentation as armor, a way to cement control through recorded proof of access, consent, and power. Believing that if everything was captured, everything was protected, but once footage exists, allegiance becomes optional. When Gene spoke about unreleased material, his voice wasn't shaken or shocked. It was calm, measured, almost resigned, as if this ending had always been unavoidable. That composure revealed something unsettling. This wasn't a sudden discovery, it was a long-delayed consequence, finally arriving to collect its debt.
Everybody want to say that 50 Cent did the whole documentary. He was responsible for doing the whole documentary, what goes in there and what goes out of there. And I don't believe that. And I don't believe that he's responsible for everything that goes in there. I don't believe he's responsible for everything that goes out of there. Guys want to say that he's snitching, you know what I'm saying? Because he's telling his truth about what went down and what he saw or what he heard or whatever like that. I don't know how to love my enemy. And if I gotta put out the truth about something that he was doing and it's wrong, and that was wrong, I don't have no problem with that shit. Not a problem at all. Keep doing it. Maybe enough men come out and speak out on some bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're saying that Diddy's family is preparing $1 billion lawsuit over this documentary.
I think they dropped it already. I don't think they ain't gonna have a chance, because before you put something out like that, they're gonna dot their I's and cross their T's. They're gonna make sure everything is in place. And if Puff had friends over there at Netflix, if it haven't came down, what it show? Look at, if it haven't came down yet, they ain't got a leg to stand on.
Yeah, you just made me think of something. I'm sure Netflix has 1 million lawyers, and I'm sure they have plenty of lawyers go over this thing to make sure it was airtight.
Yes, sir.
And they might probably even cut some stuff out that maybe they weren't even sure about. Just probably. Well, Gene, I appreciate you taking the time. Dope content as always. And I wish you luck, man. I know, man, you get on these interviews and they go crazy, man.
Yeah, man, listen. A lot of people want to, come at me, and everybody want to find fault in 50, find fault in me, find fault in anybody who's speaking out against the evil that's been going on. But what about find fault from the person who did it? Find fault for the person who starved their artist. Find fault for the person who led an artist out there to lead to his death. Find fault in a person who set up the atmosphere for one of the greatest artists in hip hop to lose his life. You know what I'm saying? Find fault in a person that allegedly had a person sore in the middle of the night and they didn't want to be sore. Find fault in this individual who did all this crazy to people, instead of find fault in the people who's talking about it and letting you know about it.
Why do you think people defended it? That's crazy, right?
I used to really believe they really wanted to be in the Diddy party.
He made it unmistakably clear that what the audience saw was filtered and restrained by design. Far more material exists. Material capable of completely redefining how this entire situation is understood. And that assertion carries real weight because Gene wasn't watching from the outside. He was embedded inside the machine, witnessing its mechanics up close. When he says the cameras never stopped rolling, it reframes everything, suggesting the documentary didn't so much expose secrets as pry open a door that had always been there, with far darker realities waiting behind it. Netflix has acknowledged that not all footage was used, a rare and telling admission that signals Just how sensitive the material truly is, reports point to hours of content deemed too volatile to air, emotional breakdowns, financial stress, escalating paranoia, reactions to looming legal threats, and conversations where personal vulnerability and legal maneuvering collided. Netflix selected what could be defended, not what would expose everything, and that decision left a vacuum. One instantly filled by speculation from social media insiders and former associates, all asking the same question. What was cut? 50 Cent deliberately fueled that curiosity, hinting that the unused footage still exists, that access hasn't vanished, and that this story is far from over. That's why the documentary feels unfinished, not because it lacked allegations, but because it lacked the raw moments where control fractures and fear bleeds through. Netflix chose caution, 50 Cent chose suspense, Diddy's team chose containment. But once the public knows unseen footage is out there, silence no longer feels neutral, it starts to feel intentional.
I didn't see this, but apparently there's another 100 hours of Diddy footage on the cutting room floor?
So Diddy is still doing press. I mean, Diddy. 50.
Diddy is not doing press.
No,
he's doing press on the yard.
He's doing press, like he's doing push-ups. No, 50 is still doing press, and obviously with the success of the Reckoning documentary, he's talking about there's more footage. There's 140 hours that he has, and each episode was only maybe an hour, I think. There was 4 episodes, so there's at least 130 something more hours that he hasn't edited or produced. And he's saying that he may put it out on YouTube just to put it out there,
like on his 50 Cent Devo page.
I don't know if it'll be on his page, but he just said he doesn't know if he's going to release it with Netflix or through Netflix. He might just put it out on YouTube or wherever, some other platform. But the one thing that he said that was interesting is he said because you see people out here trying to say, oh, the documentary can paint a narrative, this and the third, and his words were, if you see the rest of this footage, there will be no more kind of like, oh, you can paint this narrative. It's pretty clear cut. The things that are being said in the documentary, the things that he still can't believe Puff, because he says that a lot, like he can't believe Puff actually recorded all of it.
Yeah, but I mean, so why does 50 not put that? If it's that damning and that crazy, why not put it in the doc?
I don't know why. I don't know why he didn't put it in the doc. Maybe the stories. Maybe he had more people that he would need to interview and have sit down for the documentary to kind of go through those stories that are in there. It could be a number of reasons, but the fact that he has over 100 hours of footage of personal footage and things like that leading up to the case, because the story is Puff felt like he was going to win the case.
Yeah.
And that this was going to be footage for his documentary that he would have released,
the redemption,
after the trial was done and things like that. So, the amount of things that he probably was recording, just going off of the fact that he felt like they were going to win the case.
Yeah. This is my footage and these guys aren't going to put it out.
Yeah.
Like all the crazy
right.
we're going to take out.
Right.
But I mean, even I did see who I think was the director of what Diddy was trying to do had mentioned that he was on vacation or was out of town and had someone fill in for him. And that's the only footage that made it to the doc because that guy sold it. So maybe that director didn't pay the person to fill in, so he owned the footage and was able to give it away. But maybe all this other footage, 50 doesn't have permission to put out. Like, okay, he could have it, but the director's like, no, this is my footage. Like, you got the other because I had my man's fill in for me for 3 days, and he has that footage now. Right. So maybe that could be it. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like 50 is so petty that if it was that crazy, he would have just put this in the doc. But who knows? I don't even want to speculate what is on the 100 hours.
Yeah.
After Lil Rod telling me what was going on, I don't know if I want to see it visually.
I mean, and for 50 to say the footage that's on there is it leaves no more room for people to kind of say, oh, the narratives are being created, it's false. For 50 to say that, I mean, we can only imagine the footage that he's seen and that he had.
What makes the unreleased footage truly explosive isn't just what it might expose about Diddy. It's what it quietly suggests about the industry as a whole, because if one powerful figure documented himself this extensively, it raises a far more unsettling question. How many others did the same? In elite spaces, cameras weren't souvenirs, they were weapons, leverage used to secure loyalty, enforce silence, and cultivate fear. subtly altering behavior the moment people realized everything was being recorded. If the unseen material really captures private strategy sessions, emotional unraveling, and behind-the-scenes maneuvering, it stops being personal evidence and becomes a rare window into how power reacts when it feels trapped not through polished statements or controlled interviews, but in raw, unguarded moments. And that deeper exposure is exactly why legal teams respond with such ferocity.
How you feel about the documentary on Diddy? And you and 50, what's going on between both y'all? Me personally, the documentary was incredible, man. You know, shout out to 50, man. But I know you and 50, y'all got something going on, bro.
Indeed. So originally, when I heard about the reckoning of Sean Diddy Combs documentary that was produced by 50 Cent, I wasn't going to watch it. And I wasn't going to watch it because, quite frankly, I had grown a little tired of the Diddy case. You know, I had followed it, I had studied it, I had researched it. And at this point, the man was sentenced to 50 months in jail, I believe the time was that the feds gave him. There really wasn't much left to talk about. Everything had already been put out there, all the hours of testimony, hundreds of hours of court proceedings. There was nothing else to talk about as far as I was concerned. And then people kept texting me. They said, Dr. Umar, you got to see this. You got to see this. You got to see this. So one night I can't go to sleep and I decided to go ahead and watch it. And I watched all the episodes. I will say that it appeared to be very well researched from the point of view that 50 Cent wanted to portray. I don't think it was balanced in that you didn't hear anything positive at all about the man, when in fact, despite the horrendous deeds, which cannot be excused at all, I still think it would have been a little bit more credible if it was a little bit more balanced. But with that being said, the documentary was done. And after watching it, well, the first thing I'm going to say is 50 Cent does a good job with documentaries. Putting the fact that I did not appreciate a black man kicking another black man who's already down, putting that to the side, he did a good job with the documentary. Like, I could see 50 Cent doing more of these. Now, I was on a stream here in Philly a couple weeks ago with a young brother, and the question came up, and I said that, in my opinion, watching that documentary was an exercise in self-hatred, because it was. Whenever black people tear down black people, especially when they've already been torn down, it's self-hate, because we never show that energy with no other community. We have been done wrong so much and so often by Caucasians, and yet we never do a documentary on them. Do you realize, Art, there hasn't been a single documentary done on the police who have unalived all of these innocent, unarmed black people? Where's the documentary on the police officer who killed Tamir Rice? Where's the documentary on the police officers who murdered Breonna Taylor? Where's the documentary on the police officers who murdered Sonia Mancy or Sandra Bland or Freddie Gray or Philando Castile or Alton Sterling or Amir Pope? Look at all of this that has been.
This reaches far beyond one man. It's about precedent, because once footage like this can surface, years of carefully curated images instantly become fragile. People inside the industry understand that, which explains the deliberate silence, the carefully worded non-answers, and the quiet distancing by former allies who refuse to explain themselves that silence isn't confusion, it's calculation. The real fear isn't public judgment over old behavior, it's the possibility that cameras captured unfiltered truth. Moments never meant to be seen, how narratives are manufactured, how crises are controlled, how influence actually moves in rooms without witnesses. If that material ever emerges in full, it doesn't just rewrite one story, it exposes an entire system. And that's the real danger. This is no longer just about a documentary, it's about who controls reality when power starts to crack. Cameras were once tools of protection, now they may be the very thing that brings everything down.
50 Cent had a right to make that documentary. If Puffy did to that woman that 50 used to date the things that people claim he did and allowed to be done to her, even with her permission, you don't do that as a black man. That is conduct unbecoming a black man, and I would have to say that Curtis 50 Cent Jackson was justified in making a documentary art. Because if I was him, if I was in 50 shoes, I might have done a documentary too. You feel me? I'm going to be honest. You do that to my baby mom, even if I don't like her no more, even if I'm not on good terms with her no more. No matter what we've been through, you knew that was my baby mom. You knew that was my girlfriend. And you do that? You have her doing all this with you and other people, and you know that was my shorty at one time? Bro, that's a complete violation of the G Code, Art. So with that being said, 50 Cent had a personal reason to do that documentary, and I can't say he's wrong for it. Now, with that being said, Art, watching that documentary, I came to 3 conclusions. Number 1, black people are hypocrites. We are probably the biggest spiritual hypocrites in America. And I'm going to say that, Art, because we are the most spiritual people in America. We are the most religious people in America. We brought religion to America. We gave it to the world. But the reason I say black people, after watching that documentary, have to be the biggest spiritual hypocrites in America, is I'm seeing all these people. And I'm not talking about everybody. I want to be clear. I'm not talking about everybody.
50 Cent and Gene Deal didn't just bring hidden footage into the light. They challenged the long-standing assumption that power automatically buys silence. They made it clear that influence doesn't always get to write the final version of events Netflix revealed part of the story. But not all of it, and now the audience knows something is missing the most. Unsettling part isn't what's already been shown, it's the idea of what's still sealed away, unreleased, and waiting in the dark once people believe more exists. Confidence in the visible narrative begins to erode, so the real question isn't whether additional footage is out there, it's what happens. If it ever sees the light of day, will it merely confirm what many already suspect? Or will it uncover something far more devastating than anyone imagined? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe if you want to stay ahead of what's coming next, and until then, stay alert and stay real.